Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman and this is Empowering Astrology. So it's eclipse week. We got a lot going on. This is the week of May 24th through 30th, 2021. And as I was saying a few moments ago, it is eclipse week. So as I've been talking about for, I don't know, the past 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, because I wanted to give you all a big heads up, like we're in eclipse season. This is the time every 6 months, like clockwork, where the sun and the moon, they line up with the lunar nodes. They open up this new time, this new chapter, and then over the next 6 months, we're sort of living in this different framework of time because that is what astrology is. It is the study of time, it is symbolic time, it is how we live time, and eclipse season really makes us feel time. So if you're watching live, do say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. I know I see some familiar faces, and if you're watching on the replay, also say hello and tell me also where you're watching from, because I'm just a nerd who can't travel like I normally can at the moment. So I'd just like to see where in the world everybody is. So it's Gemini season. Like that's kind of crazy that we are. We're like at the midpoint, almost the midpoint of the year. And Gemini season is the time when it's about voice, it's about communication, ideas, information, travel. There's a sense of movement with Geminis and the need to get new perspectives, to see new things, for example. But this week we are looking, at this dynamic between Gemini and Sagittarius, because Sagittarius is Gemini's opposite sign. Now, just for those who don't know, opposite is not bad. It's just part of a polarity. These two signs that support one another. If Gemini is ideas and information, then Sagittarius helps us to make sense of things, put things together, put it into wisdom, knowledge, philosophy, higher education, a sense of right and wrong, a sense of even like internal or even moral compass. So we're sort of working with that dynamic this week, May 24th through 30th, 2021. Just to say again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I am an astrologer and psychic medium here in Brooklyn, New York. And you can follow me online if you don't already at empoweringastrology.com. Something that I realized as I was preparing for this show, that this is actually the 2-year anniversary of the first time I did Facebook Live. And I would go back, I don't want to go back and look at it because it probably would make me cringe a little bit because it was my first time up to bat. But I remember I did it on the Sagittarius full moon. I was like, well, it's a good time as ever to start something. I'm Sagittarising, so here we go. So, now we're 2 years in, and I know a lot of you join me week after week, and I do really appreciate it. And I even know some of you joined me on my webinar on Sunday. I did a webinar yesterday on the eclipses. So if you want a deep dive on what this eclipse season will mean for you, sort of what do eclipses mean? How do they work? Well, how are they influencing each of the 12 signs? Then go to the show notes. There's a link to the webinar. It's also on my website. You can even watch a 10-minute preview of it. But yeah, you can still get that webinar. It's 2.5 hours. It's supposed to be 90 minutes. I don't know. I went into this like vortex and I was like, oh, look, yeah, it's been 90 minutes. Meanwhile, it's been 2.5 hours. So thank you, everybody that was patient. Your time's a little funny right now. That's what eclipses do. There's sort of this bend of time, this juncture where, and I use this analogy over and over again. It's like the curtain is coming down on one act and we're preparing for the next act. And if you've been to a theatrical performance, you know that when that curtain comes down, there's maybe a sense of movement behind the scenes. There's new characters coming on the stage. People are leaving. And that's very much, I feel, how eclipse season works for each and every one of us. Everybody's going to feel this time differently, but it tends to be a little intense. It's very psychically intense, very emotionally intense. It's even intense on the physical body. So we have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves this week. But yeah, like I said, this is 2 years of doing these weekly Facebook lives. And also the other thing that happened this weekend was Saturn turned retrograde. And I gave you all a big setup for that in last week's broadcast. So if you missed it, I talked a little bit about what Saturn is. I talked a little bit about what this time in particular is about and what it means for each of the 12 signs. But if you felt like big life happening right now, it's not just the eclipses. We have Saturn, it just turned retrograde at 13 degrees of Aquarius. We are feeling time. We are feeling the weight of time. We are feeling decisions, needing to make serious decisions, to look at what I like to call big life. And I tried to frame this weekend in terms of, sitting down with your personal life coach, because that's one of the ways that we can work with the energies of Saturn, because I believe that Saturn is trying to get us to grow, to evolve, to hit a higher mark. And where do you have to do that for the next 2 years? No big deal. Next 2 years, that's the length in which Saturn will be in Aquarius. I also wanted to highlight, I was interviewed recently by Helen Butler. She's in Australia. She has a podcast called Sanctuary Chat. So if you want to learn a little bit more about me and how I came to astrology and sort of my perspectives on astrology, but also Saturn, I get really into my love of Saturn on that interview. You can check it out in the show notes. It's Sanctuary Chat. She does an interview by me. It's on my link to my website, linked in the show notes. So do check it out. So that said, let's look at the astrology of this week, May 24th through 30th of 2021. So as I was saying a few moments ago, it is eclipse week. That is pretty much the headlining, the only lining. That's not true. There's other things going on, but it's the big thing that is happening this week. So on May 26, 2021, at 5 degrees of Sagittarius, we have a full moon. So that's what a lunar eclipse is. It's a full moon that just happens to be not just happens. It just didn't decide to be an eclipse. It's an eclipse because this is a full moon that lines up with what are called the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are these 2 points in the sky. They're powerful points in the sky. They're actually not physical bodies, but they are what make eclipses happen. Just by simple physics and just the alignment of the sun and the moon and the earth. And then you have this full moon, and then the shadow of the earth is blocking the sun. So the moon turns into this shade of red. It goes away, air quotes, and then it comes back. It's an intense time. There's sort of this link that's lost between the earth and the moon, between us and the moon, because we have this really deep connection with the moon on a not just a physiological level, but on an energetic level as well. So this is why our circuits can run a little hot right now. We're not sure if we're coming or going, or if we're going up or we're going down. But lunar eclipses, they make things really interesting. So this is a week when you are navigating big life. What is big life? Big life is big decisions. It's a career change. It's a move. It's the start of a relationship, the end of a relationship. It's needing to tend to life in a way that demands our attention. So it's like you can't ignore a lunar eclipse. Now, how can you ignore that energy in your life? And we will go through the 12 signs and just give you a little bit of a brief overview of where that part of your life is getting activated. If, in particular, you are a Sagittarius, you are a Gemini, you are really feeling this energy strongly because it is in your sign. And if you're a Gemini, you're thinking, well, it's not in my sign, but it's in your opposite sign. It's in your relationship sign. And you will, Gemini, by the way, have a solar eclipse on June 10th. So you're already in the gate for an eclipse yourself. Also, if you are a Virgo or a Pisces, your signs are making what's called a cross. You're sort of cutting through this line, and you're at a crossroads. It's a big time for you, Virgo and Pisces as well. You 4 signs are what are called the mutable signs. You usher in new seasons. These sort of take us out of one phase of life and prepare us for the next seasons. That's what the mutable signs are. So what can we expect this week? So first, we have to understand that a full moon, it demands attention, it demands a decision. It sort of puts a spotlight on a certain part of our life depending on what sign we are. For some of you, if you have major planets near or at 5 degrees of Sagittarius or mutables, that includes Gemini, Virgo, or Gemini, Pisces. I knew I was forgetting somebody. Then this is a hot week for you, and this depending on the planet that's getting activated. Like, for example, if it's the moon, maybe there's a move. The moon talks about the home, it talks about the household, it talks about family, mom and dad, emotional connections. Maybe it's a very emotional time for you, for example. Or if the full moon is activating Venus, then this is something about relationships or value or worth or money, because Venus is both the planet of relationship and also the planet of money and value and worth. So this is where you have to look at the what's called the birth chart, this exact moment that you're born. And this is just, maybe some of you already know this, but this is me kind of doing my due diligence as an astrologer. The birth time is so important. You can, of course, work around not having the birth time, but when I have that birth time, it's like I have an address. That address takes me to a house, and I know exactly where to find you. But if I only have half your birth information, then I only have half the address. I gotta phone around and do you have this person on this block in this town? So anyway, that's why if you have your birth time, fantastic. If you are not sure of it and you can get a hold of it, it's worth the extra work to find it. Because when you have that chart is sort of the framework for your life. It is not your life, meaning it's not a fate, but it's a shape. And it's a shape that you live and you grow and evolve through. And that shape can be very small because we want to be small, or we don't even know we're being small, or it can be much larger. That's another topic for another time. But yes, when you know your chart, you know where these planets are activating, they are activating other things in your chart. So that's where we can get better information. That said, eclipses, I don't want you to fear eclipses. They do make things intense. They do have a reputation, but don't fear them. Just think, okay, Katie said, we are at the junction of two different points in time. We are shifting into a new story. The curtain is coming down, the curtain's coming up, and it's preparing for another act. And for a lot of you, that next act, it's not a huge dramatic change. But I do want you all to go back and think to June of 2020, because on June 5th of 2020, that was when we had the first eclipse in this series in Sagittarius. And it opened up a story. It opened up a story around truth, meaning, conviction, right and wrong, wisdom, knowledge. These are all Sagittarius archetypes. By the way, Sagittarius is a sign that points us outward towards the world. And our world can be very small or it can be very large, depending on who we are and how we sort of look outwardly and educate ourselves and expand and grow. And that's how Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So June 5th of 2020 opens a story, and maybe that story is pretty quiet. Maybe you're scratching your head and you're I don't know what was going on June 5th. My Google Calendar is blank. Nothing happened. But maybe you were having a conversation with somebody, and maybe that conversation or that story threads its way through your experiences in 2020, bringing us 6 months later to a Sagittarius new moon, solar eclipse, on December 14th. So that was another chapter in this ongoing story about finding our faith, finding what we believe in. These eclipses, and this is true especially for the one that is on Wednesday, May 26th, it's a south node eclipse. The south node of the moon is in Sagittarius. The South Node, wherever the South Node is, we are personally and collectively working through the, let's say, stickier side of the archetypes of that sign. So maybe we're all really thinking strongly about what we believe in right now, what our truth is, what our conviction, or maybe it's getting messy. And my personal philosophy with Sagittarius is, again, just my personal philosophy. I say this as somebody who's Sagittarius rising, is that 99% of the time Sagittarius is right. It knows so much. It's a sign of wisdom and knowledge, but it's that 0.1% that gets us every time. So I really want you all this week to think about that 0.1% that you are not seeing, that blind spot that gets you every time. This is a South Node eclipse. It is about working through the past, working through our karma, getting unstickied, if that's a word, because of all these complicated archetypes that are coming up with Sagittarius. Just a little historical fun fact: the last time we had a South Node eclipses have a 19-year cycle. Don't know if you know that. Was 2001, 2002, and parts of 2003. So I will allow you to draw your own parallels. But this is where here we are. We're talking about what is true, what is real, what do we stand up for? These things that are happening in other places in the world. We can't travel, or travel is restricted in some way. So we have this eclipse. It's at 5 degrees of Sagittarius on Wednesday at 7:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then, it'll still be the 26th of May, even for you, those who are in Australia and New Zealand. I know you all are watching this time. Maybe you're watching the replay, or you're waking up with me. But there's the eclipse, and so we're going to feel, and some of us will feel it more, there is a pivot around that date. And I'm just sort of heading off questions at the past. You're like, what if I do something on an eclipse? Is it bad? No, it's not bad. I will say, if you make a decision on an eclipse, it tends to be permanent. Had friends, they moved out of New York during an eclipse, but there was sort of this like, we're just going to go try California. We'll come back. And I'm thinking, you're moving on an eclipse. You're not coming back. New York has been eclipsed out of your life. So this is where I'm like, just be very conscientious about what you're doing and how you're using this energy. Not that you need to be worried or anything. It's also coming up to Mercury retrograde. I did a little bit of I got on my Sagittarius soapbox last week about Mercury retrograde and how we just all need to relax, because Mercury is retrograde 3-4 times out of the year. Of that 3-4 times out of the year, it's 3 weeks. And then if you put the shadow on either side, it's now balloons to about 6 weeks that we're all supposed to grind our lives to a halt. Don't do that. Live your life. Just do your due diligence. And I think that it's important right now that as we quote unquote do our due diligence this week, that we pay attention to what we're not seeing, pay attention to truths versus not truth, or if your truth is capital T truth or a truth, it's probably a truth, not capital T truth. But these are themes that are weaving their way into the astrology this week. Also, this eclipse in Sagittarius, it's the first one that has Jupiter in Pisces. The previous Sagittarius eclipses that we had in 2020 in June and December, December 14th, if I didn't say that already, that had Jupiter in Capricorn and Aquarius. So 2 very different signs than Pisces. So what can we feel this week? And I say feel because Pisces is what's called a water sign. It is the last water sign. It is about what we feel. And I think that there's a lot of deep emotions coming up this week. It's like we're trying to search our souls this week. We're trying to figure out what is real, what is not real, what direction. There's a sense of direction with Sagittarius. It's a very directional sign. It wants to go out there into the world. Like, what direction are we going? But Jupiter in Pisces talks about the inner search for truth and wisdom. It's inner faith. It's the need to listen to ourselves. So I think this is a great week to recalibrate our personal compass. And I got this question over on my Instagram account about, well, how do we calibrate our personal compass? Well, And it sounds cheesy, but each and every one of us, we have the answers within us. They're encoded in us. They're in our cells. They're in our DNA. They're in our unconscious. But 99.9% of the time, there's that number again, we are in our heads. So how do we learn to drop out of our heads? How do we get back into our bodies? How do we listen to ourselves more? How do we feel more and think less? Don't think, feel. So in order to do that, maybe this is a week to make a decision about a meditation practice or creating more personal ritual and practice in your life, because you have to start to feel into the space between your breath, between your heartbeat, between your thoughts, because that's where you're going to start to feel into something very different. And that you can't get there with the mind. So really think about, how is the mind not helping you this week? It could be anxiety. It could be circling thoughts. So how do you get out of circling thoughts? How do you create, how do you let go? There's a sense of surrender with Jupiter and Pisces, because Pisces is a sign that it's the least earthly of all the signs. So it's asking us to actually trust something greater than ourselves. And that's hard. That's hard, especially if our mind is telling us that we're not safe. But of course, be discerning. This is not my long pitch to get you to throw caution to the wind and to abandon reason. I think we have to make sure, that said, we have to make sure our feet are on the ground this week. Especially, we have a lot of strong Neptune energy in the astrology, and Neptune energy can just pull us someplace else, like a tide, like a current, and things are moving very quick this week. And then on top of that, Mercury turns retrograde on Saturday, May 30th, at 24 degrees of Gemini, and it's doing it in a square to Neptune. So it seems kind of counterintuitive. Eclipses, they move fast. Mercury is not moving fast at the moment. In fact, it's sitting in the sky. It's sitting in a square to Neptune. It's pretty much going to be in a square to Neptune all the way into the start of July. So we're having to feel more instead of think more. With Mercury and Neptune, the analytical capacity, our capacity to think, it's sort of running up against Neptune, and Neptune is feeling, it's intuition. So there's something about our intuition that's coming up this week, or something about intuition and spirituality that takes us into July of all time. So really search and explore, search within, get into your body, get out of your head. We are all on our phones and computers and our whatever you call it, our smart devices every day. Look, I'm guilty too. I have a Gemini moon. I'm just about, just addicted as you all. But how do we, again, get back into our body, get back into our breath, get back into alignment with something greater than ourselves? And I think that sometimes when life taps us on the shoulder, which is when, eclipse energy comes in, it's not about necessarily what we want. Sometimes it's about something greater. So let's just quickly go around the zodiac so we know exactly what our marching papers are, our marching orders are this week. Again, nothing to be anxious about. This is what I tell people. When we actually get to the eclipse, we've already been feeling it for 4, 5, 6 weeks. It's not something that's a brand new thing out of left field. So these are themes that if you go back and you look into April, you're like, oh yeah, I was having that conversation. I was thinking that thing. Well, just maybe now that it's an eclipse, it's more real. So Aries. Aries, this is, again, it's sort of, you have what's called a natural chart. So Sagittarius is what's called your ninth sign. So this is highlighting everything that I've been talking about: faith, truth, wisdom. You have some decisions to make about, what do you believe in? What direction are you going? What are your convictions? What are you standing for? On a little bit more of a mundane level, maybe you are planning a long distance trip. Those things are still happening somehow, or maybe it's for the future, maybe it's for 2022, but that part of your chart does talk about long distance journeys, long distance travel, the need to seek and explore outside of ourselves. This part of the chart also talks about higher education, so maybe this eclipse is either asking, well, not asking, like inviting you, or maybe making you think about going back to school, or maybe education has been a big part of your experiences over the last year. And you do know that you're in this dynamic of needing to get more information, new perspectives, and new ideas right now. And if you're an Aries, it's very much about the mind, it's very much about what you believe in, and these sort of greater convictions, this worldview that you live within. But maybe with these future eclipses, the one that's in June, you need to get some new perspectives, Aries. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Aries, you're wrong. Maybe we're all wrong. I don't know. Just something to play around with and see if you can see things from a slightly different perspective. Taurus, this full moon is highlighting what I call your 8th sign, the 8th room in your astrology house. Sometimes, if you've worked with me on 101, I will refer to parts of your chart as rooms, because there's this sense that astrology is a space. Astrology is a space inside of us. It's a space that we inhabit. And when we get to that 8th room, we have to face ourselves. So facing ourselves means that we have to look at our shadow. We have to look at our deepest emotions. We have to navigate our fears, our vulnerabilities. There might be themes around intimacy, sexuality, but you are feeling a lot right now, Taurus. And to be fair, Taurus, you are already going through a big shift in your life. And so maybe because you're going through this big shift, you're like, am I safe? Taurus, you're not a sign that wants to necessarily make big changes, because your job as a zodiac sign is to keep things nice and safe and even, keep things chill. But things are not chill right now, Taurus. So how do you look at this full moon and sort of sit with yourself, sit with the complicated emotions and feelings that are coming up for you at this time? And that said, we have Gemini season. It's about money, it's about income, material stability, material security for you, things that are very much in your wheelhouse as a Taurus. So maybe you're really focusing on your money situation, your finance, your books, your assets, your wealth, what you don't have, what you want. Maybe this is an aspirational time for you, but it's hitting some buttons, Taurus. And I'll just say, because other things, other signs, other planets are happening in your chart, that the more that you can reinvent yourself right now, Taurus, the more that I think, I could be wrong, the more that I think it's going to pay off in the long run. So maybe you're sort of seeing something that you have to change, but you've been putting it off. But don't put it off anymore, because it's part of this greater story where you have to change. I say have to because Uranus is in Taurus until 2025, 2026. You are in the midst of a massive, powerful reinvention. So hang in there, Taurus. Gemini, this full moon is in your relationship sign. Sagittarius is your relationship sign. So this is sort of the standard interpretation when there is an eclipse in this part of your chart. There is the start of a relationship. There is the end of a relationship. Maybe I shouldn't laugh. There is a need to do things differently with a partner. Maybe something is going on with a partner. Now, if you are not in a relationship, and nor do you want one, of course, this is not just about romantic relationship. It's also about how do you connect to people on a one-on-one level. This is a time when you are doing the dance. The spotlight is more on you right now because you have the solar eclipse, you have the north node of the moon in Gemini, so it's more about your wants, your needs. But nevertheless, relationships are an act of negotiation. How do you make space for somebody else? How do you find that balance point? But this full moon is really highlighting other people in your life. And maybe to some earlier comments I made before we started going through the signs, things are a little sticky at the moment. If there is something coming up with a relationship, it has deep roots. it's not a new thing. It's something that you and a partner have been figuring out or what have you. This also can talk about major milestones between two people, especially those that are in a committed partnership. So this does include moves, marriages, children, all those big moments that sort of mark two people's lives together. So I also put that out there. But nevertheless, Gemini, you are at a turning point. 2 weeks from now, you're going to have that solar eclipse in Gemini, and this is the first solar eclipse in Gemini since 2012. So yes, Gemini, if you're kind of being like, what's going on? What's happening to me? Just go back to 2011, 2012, because that's when we had eclipses back in Sagittarius and Gemini. And then, as I was saying earlier, 2001, 2002, that's when we had eclipses also in these signs. So everything just repeats like clockwork, because astrology is a circle, it's a cycle. What's after Cancer? I had to think about it for a moment. Cancer. This is about health and wellness for you. How do you take care of yourself? How do you make sure that everything's up to date? You've got your appointments scheduled, but more importantly, like, how do you get your day-to-day life organized? And when there is an eclipse in this part of the chart, and I'm just saying this because eclipses, they disrupt the narrative. I mean, think about it for a moment. Well, it's not a moment, it's a certain amount of minutes. For a certain amount of minutes, the link between the sun and the moon is broken, or the link between the earth and the moon is broken. And that sort of signals that there is a switch in time. And for you, Cancer, the switch is happening in the part of your chart that talks about how do you organize your day? How do you take care of things? How do you take care of you, your work, your projects? So this eclipse might say that something is shaking up and shifting in your day-to-day life. Now, if this were a year ago, you could say, oh, look, now I have to work from home all the time. So maybe now you're going back to the office after a year from working from home or working remotely. Or maybe you're like, you know what, I like this. How do I do it differently? Or how do I make changes? Maybe you are using this energy of an eclipse to make some lasting, positive, and permanent changes in how you take care of diet, fitness, and nutrition. So this also talks about the things that we are sort of addicted to. That solar eclipse on June 10th will highlight letting go of things, including addiction. So use this time wisely, get organized, get focused. But Cancer, you are in a time on a larger level where you are having to do a lot of deep emotional heavy lifting, a lot of looking at yourself. And with that in mind, as you start to rearrange let's say your emotional furniture, how do you rearrange your physical furniture to match all these big changes that you're making right now, Cancer? Leo. So this part of your chart is about children. It's about creativity. It's about self-expression. So whether it's literal children or your inner child, it's a time to play. It's a time to be you. But that said, things are a little sticky. This is what's called a South Node eclipse. So things about the past are coming up. Emotions are coming up. And can I be myself? Can I be creative? Can I start something new? Can I be a parent? Can I have a child? So maybe these themes are coming up for you. I think that there is this larger story, Leo, about the self. Who are you? And Leo, you are a sign that is supposed to be sort of card carrying, like, I know exactly who I am, business card. But sometimes, Leo, we forget. We get caught up in life. We get caught up in other people, and use this lunar eclipse to get back to exactly who you are. Because Leo, you are one of those signs, not a mutable sign. You're what's called a fixed sign. And I mentioned this last week, but you're one of those signs where a lot of things are shifting at the moment. And maybe you just need to kind of be in the comfort of you right now. You can use this lunar eclipse to start a new project, to start a creative project, to really express who you are, to re-establish a sense of personality and pizzazz. This part of the chart also talks about fun. We don't think of the word fun when we think of eclipses, but how do you make more space, more time, seriously, for you and the things that nourish you, give you passion, give you life. So this eclipse is maybe asking you to make some changes because it's been a hard year. We sort of forgot ourselves. We forgot about the things that feed us, that create passion or create that that spark in our life. And maybe this is your eclipse, Leo, to get that spark back. Virgo. So Virgo, you're in that cross I was talking about, the what's called a mutable cross. So Sagittarius is what's called your sign of home and family. It creates the base of your astrology chart. It's the family room of your astrology house. So that part, it holds up everything. It's the foundation. So you have an eclipse there. And that says, okay, where are you living, Virgo? Because maybe it's time to move. And maybe you moved a year ago because there was an eclipse in this part of your chart on June 5th. Maybe you didn't move, but you made a lot of changes in your home environment. But classic astrology is that when there's an eclipse in this part of the chart, there's a move. Or somebody moves in, somebody moves out. There's a change in the household. You can use this energy, of course, to make changes in your living environment, to start a project in the home, to focus on, and I will say that you do have Jupiter in your relationship sign now. So maybe other people are moving in with you, or, maybe you and a partner are moving in together. Or maybe it's time to make more space in your home environment for other people. But it's also about, what do you need, Virgo? Getting back to your emotional core. Again, it's been a hard year. We need to make sure that the root parts of ourselves are getting fed. We feel safe. We're being held. But nevertheless, Virgo, you are at a crossroads. Life is sort of taking a turn, and it's time to go in a new direction. And if you're going back in your mind and you're thinking, oh, what was going on in 2011, 2012, 2001, 2002, that's sort of this, it's not that it's a carbon copy of what was going on back then, but it is a connection, like a thread in time. So just go back to those moments and think about what was happening, and maybe you'll see some echoes. Who knows? Libra. So this is an eclipse that's in what's called your third sign. The third sign is about voice and communication. So how are you sharing your voice right now? This eclipse is in Sagittarius, so Sagittarius typically has a lot to say. It has a lot of opinions. Maybe you are sharing your opinions. Maybe you have a lot to say right now, Libra, but because this is a South Node eclipse, just things might be a little sticky. Just make sure you're not saying the wrong thing. But nevertheless, this is a time that's really focused on education, educating yourself. This could be classes. This could be taking workshops. This could be just picking up books, good old-fashioned books, and really expanding your knowledge. And maybe this is a time when you do have something important to say or something powerful to say. Jupiter is in Pisces, so maybe this is something when you need to clear the air with somebody, you need to heal something, you need to let something go. But so maybe you're using that to work on a relationship connection or somebody with whom you have a past difference of opinion about. But this is also a time when it's about travel. It could be just running around town, trips, the neighborhood, you got things to do, places to go. So it's probably a really busy time, especially with that Gemini eclipse that's coming up. You got Venus in Gemini. Venus is your planet. So a lot of things are moving right now, Libra. Scorpio. So Scorpio, you are not in the same boat as Virgo, Gemini, Pisces, and Sagittarius, but you are in another boat. It's called Saturn square Uranus boat. So a lot of things are probably happening in your life at the moment, Scorpio. That said, with the lunar eclipse and what's called your second sign, maybe you're feeling like, oh my God, am I safe? Am I safe to make these big changes. Maybe you're focusing on money. Do you have enough? Do you need to get it organized? Do you need to make changes in how you earn a living or how you spend that money? But it is sort of hitting at these core things for you, Scorpio, because you are a sign that is very much motivated by safety and stability. You want it. You are going to try to, strategize and organize your life in order to facilitate and maintain safety and stability. A lot of that is tied to money. Money, unfortunately, or the resources or the things that we own are very much tied to, am I safe? Am I safe in this world? So the spotlight is on spending. Maybe you're making big purchases. To be fair, Sagittarius is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter was never known for its restraint. Jupiter tends to go all out. And then you do have that solar eclipse 2 weeks later that's in the sign of finance. It's a sign of wealth. So maybe you're getting your financial ducks in a row, that's a word. Maybe you are thinking of ways to increase your income, to create more wealth in your life, more material stability. Maybe you're talking to your financial advisor. Maybe it's about taxes and making sure that your taxes and debt and all that stuff is organized. But like I said, the tectonic plates of your life are shifting right now, Scorpio. And as they shift, that is hitting these deeper emotional points for you. Am I safe? Can I move forward? Is it going to be okay? So maybe you're doubling down on what you know best, which is just like making sure you have all these resources at your disposal. Sagittarius. So I know you're like the belle of the ball this week. So the spotlight is on you if you are an early Sagittarius, if you were born around the 26th of November, plus or minus a couple of days. This takes us, I would go even as far as the 22nd of November all the way to 29th. To kind of give you a little bit of a range, but if your birthday is around the 26th, like the spotlight is on you. If your birthday is not on the 26th, the spotlight is still on you. It's just not as intense. So this is a time, Sagittarius, where you are at a crossroads. Life is shifting. You are at the juncture of two different spaces. And again, just go back and you look at June 5th, 2020, which was the start of the story. Now we go to December 14th of 2020. That was the next part of the chapter of the story. Here we are 6 months later. Now the story is heating up. Now we're at the middle of the story. We're going to have a Sagittarius solar eclipse on December 4th of 2021. And then we close out this eclipse series next April, May there's going to be a Gemini solar eclipse, but the story is sort of at the midpoint right now for you. Nevertheless, life is changing. That's just what eclipses do. They just say it's time for life to change. You have not had, like I said, you had that lunar eclipse a year ago, but that's, so you already know what this energy feels like. It's just different now. What's different? Jupiter. Jupiter is in the part of your chart that's at the bottom. It's about home and family. So you're at a crossroads. Your living situation's at a crossroads. Your family's at a crossroads. Everything's at a crossroads right now, Sagittarius. So where are you going? You're a sign that has a lot of, let's say, optimism and faith, except when you don't. That's the thing about Sag. Sometimes it can sort of lose that steam, lose that faith and optimism. But this is I think a general dynamic with the eclipse that's going to happen in Gemini 2 weeks from now, where it's not about you, it's about other people and making space for other people and shifting maybe some of the bigger goalposts of your life in order to make more connection happen in your life. Is that good English? Yeah. So this is a big time for you, Sag. And if your birthday is around the 26th, it's sort of with my rule of thumb as an astrologer, if there's an eclipse on your birthday, the next 6 months are going to be very different than the previous 6 months. And if you're thinking, but how different? It's just different. It's going to be different for everybody. Capricorn. So now we're getting into what's called the end of your chart, Capricorn. The end of your chart is about your blind spots. It's about your unconscious, but it's also about spirituality. I call this room the 12th room. I call it the God room because there has to be a space in the wheel in the house that deals with the divine, spirituality, and that our connection to the divine. So this is let's say, a spotlight on your blind spots, but also a spotlight on your spirituality, whether it's a part of your life or it's not a part of your life. Again, just go back and look at June of 2020 and see what is the common thread, the common theme. How is the theme, how is the thread progressing and growing and bringing you forward? But this lunar eclipse also is asking you to let go. In this part of our house, in this part of our chart, it's not about what we want. It is the least worldly. It's the place where we cannot bring our ego into this space. So you are shedding the past. You are releasing. You are taking the boxes of your life and you are giving them away. You're giving them to a friend. You're giving them to charity. You're making space for a very different chapter in your life, Sagittarius. This is also a lunar eclipse that's asking you to slow down. Do not push too hard. Do not work too hard, because the 12th sign for you is also about rest and recuperation. So this is a time when maybe you are feeling like, why am I so tired suddenly? Because maybe now the astrology clock is saying, nope, it's time to rest for you. So just use this time wisely. Again, don't push, don't work too hard. I know that's a little too hard for my Capricorns that are watching. But this is also, again, a time for you to make psychic space for you to prepare for this next new chapter in your life. Aquarius. So Aquarius, this is your 11th sign. The 11th sign is the sign that points us outward towards the world. It's about the future, our hopes and dreams for the future. So this is a very visionary lunar eclipse for you. It's also about friendship. So this is a time when you need to look at who are your friends. Keep in mind that Saturn, your planet, is also in Sagittarius, and Saturn can be a little brutal in Aquarius. Saturn's basically been going through your friends, your contacts, and deleting. And to be fair, it's been doing this for everybody. But I think for you, you're in such a new time, Aquarius, with Saturn in your sign. Saturn's going to be in Aquarius until March of 2023. That maybe you're seeing old connections run their course, or maybe new people are coming in with this lunar eclipse. But there's a sense of shared past, shared connections, something that unites you, maybe your convictions, your ideals. But this is a time where it is about making sure that you not only have good quality people in your life, or maybe you're navigating or negotiating something on a community level. Maybe you're dealing with a group, or you're dealing with something in your community, something with on a social justice level. But that eclipse that's in 2 weeks is going to be in the sign that talks about you. It's in your 5th sign. So how do you find that dance, that balance about you being exactly who you are, but then having to negotiate the needs and wants of the group or the needs and wants of your community? And maybe you have to take a look at things where you might not be seeing things clearly, or maybe you think you're right about something, but maybe you're not, because Jupiter, I think for everybody, Jupiter is asking us to sort of stop, get out of an old story, surrender, see things from a different perspective, and connect back to our intuition. But like I said, the focus is on community, your place in the community, your friends, your social network, and also your vision for the future. So don't forget to start to think about, where do you want to be in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Last but not least, a Pisces. So Pisces, you're in the hot seat. You're not a Gemini, obviously not a Sagittarius, but Pisces, these eclipses are what are making what's called a cross to you. So Sagittarius is your career sign. Go back and think, okay, well, what was going on in career in June of 2020? What was again going on in December of 2020? Here we are 6 months later. There's a common thread. Maybe it's not exactly the same thing, but there's this return to a story. When there are eclipses in this part of the chart, it's a very Now, traditional way of interpreting the astrology is that there's a change in your job situation. So this could mean a promotion, this could mean a change in your job. This could be a job change. This could be going off in a different direction. There is a need to take on more responsibility at this time, but also you're negotiating a lot of the things right now, Pisces. It's sort of like the four corners of your life are really hot at the moment: family, relationships, career, you. Let's not forget that in 2 weeks, on June 10th, there's a solar eclipse in what's called your fourth sign. So there could be a move, there could be a change in the household, a change in residence, people moving in, people moving out. That said, how does that connect in some way to your professional life? Do you need to move for your work? Do you need to make sure that your home life is a good support for your professional life, for your professional ambitions? Do you need to make sure that you and a partner, whether it's a romantic partner or not, are on the same page? Maybe you're dealing with some sort of relationship issue at work. It could mean, like, how do you negotiate and find commonality with a colleague? To add to that, Jupiter is in your sign right now. Jupiter's in Pisces, so this is giving you a lot of strength at the moment. So maybe just file that in the back of your head in case you felt like you haven't had a lot of strength in the last year. Jupiter, your planet, was in your 12th sign, so you were in this sort of liminal psychic space where things were ending. You were sort of making way for a new life, and so you've got one foot now in this new life, but you still got this foot in this old life. And I think this is a dance you're doing at different points throughout 2021. But this is a big time for you, Pisces. So that is just a brief run through of the astrology for the 12 signs for this week and this eclipse that we're going to have in Sagittarius, the first of 2 eclipses this season. We will have a solar eclipse in Gemini on June 10th. It'll be at 19 degrees of Gemini at 6:53 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, in case you want to mark that down for the future. So yeah, we are officially in eclipse season. After we get past that eclipse on Wednesday, not only do we go into that sort of liminal space between the eclipses where time feels weird, our encounters feel fated and loaded in some way, and then we have that Mercury retrograde on Saturday, May. I keep saying March in my head. I'm like, maybe I'm just still in March. May 30th. So just back up what needs to be backed up. Just have flexible plans. Mercury is turning retrograde. It's eclipse season. It's sort of everything's happening all at once. And then on June 14th, we sort of bookend eclipse season with Saturn making its second square to Uranus. We got like Saturn retrograde, then we got the eclipses, then we have Saturn square Uranus. So it's like this chunk of really intense time where things are happening. And if you are a mutable sign and if you are a fixed sign, life's probably not calm at the moment. So thank you all for joining me for another live look at the astrology. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I am an astrologer and psychic medium here in Brooklyn, New York. You can follow me online if you don't already at Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can watch this on IGTV. Maybe you already are on YouTube, or listen on Spotify if you want to listen to this as a podcast. You can find me online at empoweringastrology.com. You can book a consultation. I know a lot of you on the chat are my clients, and also you can sign up for my newsletter. I send a newsletter every Monday morning that gives you a little bit of the heads up details for the week. And of course, if you liked what I was saying about the eclipses, or you are intrigued, I did a whole 2.5-hour webinar on Saturday, which you can still purchase the replay. But there you go. Thank you so much for joining me. Be well, take care of yourself, drink lots of water, get fresh air, don't panic. It's all gonna be okay. So I'll see you all next week. Bye.